Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to our second meeting of Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Buck. Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Doyante.
Here.
Senator Pizzino.
Present.
Chair Nguyen.
Here, and please mark Senator Buck present when she arrives. I know that she comes from Senate Education, and there she is. So we will mark her present as she is walking in right now. I'd like to welcome everyone to the committee here in Carson City, Las Vegas, and anyone watching over the internet. Our agenda today, we have some presentations from Southwest Gas, NV Energy, and the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada, the PUCN. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping announcements that I'd like to make. Again, if you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. We may take things in a different order, although I think this will be pretty quick today. I've asked the presenters to give brief, high-level overviews, just to allow some questions for committee members. Again, committee exhibits must be submitted electronically or a PDF. So most of the presentations that are being heard today are already up on Nellis. So if you'd like to follow along and read them on your computer, your tablet, or your phone, you can do so as well. And we will we'll do public comment at the end of the agenda today. And again, I'd remind, and I will say this again, please keep your public comment to 2 minutes so everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated and assure that we get through the agenda in a timely fashion. Again, anyone that's coming to the table, just for our record keeping, please say your name, and I will try to remember this as well. Say your name, spell it for the record, and every time you speak, if you could also announce your name as well. So we will just jump right into this, and our first presentation of the afternoon is going to be from Southwest Gas. If I can have Scott Leadham, the Director of Public Affairs for Southwest Gas, come to the table. I don't know if you have anyone else. It looks like you have also Mr. Dylan Keith, Senior Manager of Government Affairs, also at Southwest Gas. And go ahead and introduce yourselves, say your name for the record, spell it, and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Leadham.
Sorry about that. They're distracted by
That's okay.
power banks, but go ahead.
There are gifts for us too down here, or just up there? My name is Scott Leadham. I'm the Director of Regulation and Public Affairs for Southwest Gas. With me is Dylan Keith, who you just introduced as well. We also have down in Las Vegas, Chris Brown, who's the Director of Regulation and Gas Supply, in case we have any technical questions I need to phone a friend. So we will start our presentation. Just a high-level overview of our company. We are Southwest Gas is a natural gas local distribution company. We're a utility that not so much sells a product, but provides a service to people across Nevada. Unlike other utilities, we are not vertically integrated, meaning we don't own any natural gas production or distribution, or we just operate the distribution lines that deliver natural gas to homes and businesses. So we purchase natural gas on the open market and deliver it to our customers across 3 states. As you can see, just wanted to give you an overview of our service territory. In Arizona, we serve the Phoenix metro area all the way down to the border. Small parts of California, the high desert area in Victorville and Barstow, also around Lake Tahoe and Truckee. And then in Nevada, we serve all the communities that have natural gas service, except Reno and Sparks, which is served by NV Energy. And as you can see, there is the state that have natural gas service are concentrated in Clark County, and then all along the I-80 corridor from Carson City over to Elko. A little more Nevada-specific information on this slide. I won't go through all of these data points, but we have nearly 1 million customers here in Nevada, still adding thousands of customers each year with new residential and commercial growth across the state. Our company and industry supports over 8,000 jobs, both direct and indirect jobs across the state. As you can see on the far right, the vast majority of our customers are homes and small businesses. However, those customers don't necessarily use the majority of the natural gas that we use here in Nevada, and you can see that on the chart just below that. You can also see that there are significant cost savings from using natural gas directly at your home and business, and I'll get into those numbers shortly. There's still a strong preference, customer preference for natural gas here in Nevada. Much of this data comes from a survey that was conducted by Applied Analysis across our service territory. We're very proud of our customer satisfaction scores, which averaged about 97.5% last year. Customer satisfaction. There were a few months that we hit 99% customer satisfaction scores, which we're very proud of. It wasn't during the last winter, of course, but we are very proud of our customer satisfaction scores. Our survey also showed that over 80% of Nevadans prefer to live in a home with multiple energy sources, and that cuts across the generational divide, as you can see. It also shows that over 80% of people in Nevada don't support banning the use of natural gas in the state and want multiple energy options in their homes and businesses. One of the reasons natural gas service remains so popular with customers is because of the value that people get for their money. Powering your appliances with natural gas remains a very affordable and financially competitive form of energy for homes and for businesses. And as you can see here, in Nevada, it's about 3 times cheaper than powering your home with all electric service. As the legislature tackles issues surrounding affordable housing here in the state, it's important to remember that long-term costs of operating a home should always be part of that equation for Nevada residents. As you can see on these graphs, the long-term ownership of natural gas appliances is, in every case, across the 4 main uses for natural gas in a home: space heating, water heating, cooking, and clothes drying. The annual costs of operating these appliances are significantly lower over a 15-year life cycle for an appliance. Again, providing a very good value for our customers and for Nevada residents. Safety is always at the forefront of what we do as a company. Very proud of our safety record. Both our overall damage numbers and our damage ratio per 1,000 miles of pipe are down over previous years. Our 0.8% damage ratio is among the best in the entire natural gas industry. It speaks to the success of our 811 Call Before You Dig program and the advertising that we do to make sure that people know that they should call before they dig even in their yards. Our emergency response times are also among the best in the industry. If you call us and smell gas in your home or business, over 2/3 of the time we are there in 30 minutes or less, and almost 99% of the time we're there within an hour. It's important to know that these are Southwest Gas response times. This is when our people show up after an incident is called in, and not the emergency responders times. And these are also tracked and reported to the PUCN on a regular basis. Renewable natural gas, or RNG, for the new committee members, is the process of capturing biogas that is created at a wastewater treatment facility or a landfill or a dairy, and treating that biogas to pipeline quality standards and then serving it to customers. We are engaged in a number of RNG activities across the state. And for agencies like the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, adding RNG to their fleets can help them further drive down GHG emissions in the areas that they serve. The RTC is already heavily invested in compressed natural gas, or CNG, for their buses in Southern Nevada, and adding RNG into their fuel mix is something they can do seamlessly without any additional retrofits required, and again removes even more emissions from their fleet, which savings are already significant since CNG is so much less carbon intensive than doing diesel. The partnership we have with RTC to add RNG to their fleets has decreased emissions equivalent to removing over 13,000 passenger vehicles from the road. Our Great Basin transmission pipeline up here in northern Nevada has also constructed an interconnect to accept RNG produced at nearby facilities from trucks, and the RNG production at these facilities is enough to power nearly 11,000 homes for a year. I wanted to give you a quick update on some of our expansion projects here in the state. In the 2015 session, the legislature unanimously approved SB 151 that allows us to expand natural gas service to unserved areas of the state. We've since then done 2 expansion projects, one in Mesquite, the city of Mesquite in Clark County, and one in the Spring Creek community in Elko County. Both have been very successful projects. We've added over 1,100 customers in Mesquite and over 500 customers in Spring Creek. And some of the neighborhoods we've gone into in Spring Creek have had a near 100% participation rate as they're displacing different fuels that they're powering their homes with. In both cases, natural gas service has decreased GHG emissions in these areas from replacing, like I said, higher carbon-intensive fuels in those areas, propane in Mesquite, and also propane and even heating oil or wood-burning stoves in Spring Creek. So as you can see, those emission savings are quite significant in both areas. Finally, last session, we worked with Madam Chair to make natural gas utilities subject to a planning process similar to the IRP process the electric utilities go through every 3 years. That bill is Senate Bill 281. That also passed last session. We are required to submit to the PUCN all of our major planned investments, our energy efficiency programs, our planned RNG and hydrogen projects, our future expansion projects, pipeline replacement projects, and other activities that we're engaged in for consideration to the PUCN, and the PUCN can either accept, deny, or accept in part that plan that we submit to them. The process is designed to ensure that we meet future demands for natural gas service at the lowest reasonable cost to customers. And the regulations for this process are nearly complete, not quite. We're anticipating them being completed in the next few months. And we must file our first plan by October 1st of this year. So with that, as promised, very brief presentation. We're open to any questions you may have.
I think you answered the questions I had. Does anyone else have any questions? I think Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Gas-powered vehicles, do you guys, with natural gas, do you guys pay a road tax or anything like that diesel and gasoline engines do?
Yes, CNG, Scott Leadham for the record. We do see, there is a tax charge on CNG that's put in vehicles. I don't know what the rate is, but we do pay a tax. Our CNG users do pay for a tax on those.
Okay, no, good. I just
Mr.
checking.
Leadham, can you explain what CNG means?
Sorry, that's compressed natural gas, so that's like what goes into the RTC buses that I mentioned earlier. There are some passenger vehicles that use CNG as well, but not very many. Not as many as trash haulers or buses.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Senator Hansen. Do you have any other further questions? Look at that. I think you're off the hook. You answered some of my questions regarding Senate Bill 281 from last session. I'm glad to see that it's being implemented. I know that it took a lot of work to get to that place, but it seems like it's bringing a little bit more transparency and predictability, not only for the industry, but for consumers and customers as well. So thank you for your presentation, and I will let you step back unless you have said anything else you'd like to say.
No, thank you. And Scott Leadham, for the record, thank you for your work with us on that bill last session, Senator. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think we will turn right now to the NV Energy team. I think Ryan Bellows, are you going to take the lead on this one? No Tony today? He's like hiding. He's hiding, taking notes. Welcome to the table, Mr. Bellows, the Vice President of Government and External Relations at NV Energy. And I will go ahead and have you introduce yourself, spell your name for the record the first time, and begin when you're ready.
So for the record, Ryan Bellows, RyanBellows, and Chair Wynn, Vice Chair Pazina, and members of the committee, it's great to be here with you today. I'm Ryan Bellows, the Vice President of Government and External Relations at NV Energy. Over the last few sessions, this committee has really driven energy policy for the state and really done some great things for Nevadans. And so I want to just take a couple minutes. I heard the chair say brief, so I'm going to try to do that. But I want to take a few minutes and cover some of the pieces of legislation that have come out of this committee and which have really made an impact on the state. So I'll start first with just a general overview of NV Energy. So we've been around serving the state for a long time now, over 150 years in northern Nevada, over 100 years in southern Nevada. We provide electricity to 90% of the state, and also provide gas service to about 200,000 customers here in the Reno-Sparks area. So we have 2,700 employees across the state. Many of those are represented by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and we generate, transmit, and distribute energy. So Mr. Leadham mentioned that they were not vertically integrated. We are, and so let me move to one of the first bills I'll cover. This was a 2019 bill that came out of this committee, and it was to amend and establish the renewable portfolio standard for Nevada, setting it at 50% renewable energy that we are to provide by the year 2030. So in the last year that we have calculated or tabulated that, we were at 39.7% in 2023, so close to 40% of the energy that we are providing is renewable. And so we're certainly proud of that, and have projects across the state, both solar, geothermal, kind of hard to read there, also some hydro and some wind as well. Another bill that predated that renewable portfolio standard was in 2013, Senate Bill 123, that went through this committee, and which directed us to retire our coal plants. And we are on the cusp of doing that. Our last coal units will be retired at the end of 2025. Our last remaining units are out at Valmy. That plant has now been will be refueled, and we will be providing natural gas. And so this led us to receiving an A rating from the Sierra Club as far as our efforts to retire coal on that front. So I'll talk just a second about our planning process. So we have an integrated resource planning process that we are constantly developing and refining. We are to file an integrated resource plan every 3 years. There was some legislation that came through Assembly Bill 448 last session that allowed us to file more frequently complete integrated resource plans. And so that's something that we will be utilizing more frequently every 3 years to establish what are the needs and what are the resources for the state, what needs to be built and developed to be able to serve our customers. And so I'll cover just quickly a couple of the projects that have been recently approved through that integrated resource plan process. Out at Valmy, so I mentioned that those are our last remaining coal units. Some peaking units that will be 400 megawatts, and will be limited run capacity, would run during our summer peak. Those were recently approved. Those are also hydrogen compatible for the long term. Should those technologies become viable, they will be able to, a portion of those use hydrogen. The other pieces, while that was approved, the predominant and lion's share of the approval were renewable resources, over 1,000 megawatts of solar energy, along with 1,000 megawatts of battery storage. And so I won't walk through each of those projects, but 2 projects in southern Nevada and then one up here in northern Nevada, which are going to be big projects and which are needed. So while we go through this rigorous IRP planning process, the amount of energy that we're seeing that is being requested now is remarkable, both in the size that is being requested, the amount of load, and also just the timing in which that it's being requested is unprecedented. So just for perspective purposes, this July of 2024, we had a peak load of close to 8,600 megawatts. Which was our highest on record, and so that's across the whole state. We are seeing a lot of individual data centers coming in that are asking for 1,000 megawatts just for one data center, and so a lot of that is in northern Nevada, and so certainly we anticipate that our load is going to continue to increase. If a lot of that data center load shows up, I have on the screen there that an additional 15,000 megawatts are currently under study. We'll see how much of that actually shows up, but to the extent a lot of that materializes, we're going to need to continue to add resources to be able to serve customers. And it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a mix of resources to be able to provide that amount of power, the amount of power that's needed, and to provide it 24/7. It's not going to be renewable resources alone. It's going to be a mix of natural gas, and that's what you saw in our last integrated resource plan. So I'll shift to our GreenLink Nevada project. So this was another bill in 2021. This is a major transmission line that we're going to be constructing. Actually, construction has already commenced on GreenLink West, which is the dotted red line on the left side of the screen there. So that is to add a transmission line from Vegas to the Yerington area. We received our record of decision and notice to proceed from the BLM last year, and so construction is underway on that piece. After that's completed in Yerington, they're going to just go right over and construct Green Link North, which will connect Yerington to Ely. So with those transmission lines in place, we will be able to transmit and deliver energy more effectively in a reliable manner across the state. We'll be able to bring on more resources. This project is also bringing a tremendous amount of economic activity to all of those counties along the way, and a tremendous amount of jobs as well. So this is a project that we're proud of that also came out of this committee. So moving forward to yet another bill, Senate Bill 329, and this was in 2019 that also came out of this committee, was to establish the Natural Disaster Protection Program. And so we are seeing prolific wildfire activity across the country and certainly throughout the West. And so we want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward to prevent those fires and make sure that our infrastructure is not the cause of any of those fires. And so part of the program is to really step up our vegetation management practices to remove unhealthy trees and to make wider line clearances under our lines. We've really stepped up the amount of inspections and patrols that we've been accomplishing. Also trying to make the grid more resilient. So whether that's undergrounding pieces of line or putting covered conductor over the top of our line so that if it were to fall, it wouldn't cause a spark. And so really stepping up those efforts, and that's been a great piece of legislation that is making a real difference. So I think despite our best efforts and all the great work that we've done, wildfire is certainly still top of mind. It is something that we obviously want to avoid. But as we've talked to experts and looked at what surrounding states are doing, what we're being told and what the research is showing is that we're just not really at a level of insurance that is acceptable or adequate. We're at about $400 million that we have in traditional insurance coverage, and if you followed any of the wildfires in Los Angeles, I think some of the estimates were $150 billion. And so what the folks are telling us is that we need to be closer to $1 billion in coverage. And so you really can't get that on the traditional market, or if you can, it's really expensive. And so what we have an active current proposal before the Public Utilities Commission right now, which is to allow us to create and establish a self-insurance policy, which would collect $500 million from customers over a 10-year period to supplement and to have the adequate and appropriate amount of insurance coverage in place. And so the impacts of that for Southern Nevada is about 50 cents a month for an average residential customer bill. For Northern Nevada, it's about $2.40. And so that's something that we are looking forward, which will be certainly heard over the next several months before the commission. I promise I only have a few more slides here. So community-based solar resources, this was an assembly bill that came through this committee in 2019, and so this allowed us to build and develop community-based solar resources throughout the state. So far, we have resources right now at Mojave High School, at Freedom Park, and at the Moana Springs Center Swim Center here in Reno. We have 4 more projects that have just been approved, that are pending PUC approval, which we are proposing that should be built. Carson City Public Works, the Washoe County Senior Center, UNLV Shadow Lane Campus, and the City of Las Vegas Lorenzi Park. And so what the model is for this is that the energy that is produced off these community-based solar resources go to certain categories of customers. So it goes to low-income customers at a discount. In the last few years, we're seeing about a 9 to 10% discount off their power bills if they sign up for that program. And so that's been a great service for them. Also goes to disadvantaged businesses who also receive that same discount, or also customers who aren't able to put solar on their rooftop. Maybe they live in an apartment or something of that vein. The other thing I'll shift to, another, I guess, current event. We will be filing for a rate review in Southern Nevada, and we are going to be including a low-income rate proposal in that filing. And so what the proposal is to assist folks who are having difficulty paying their bills. And so what the concept is to have us waive our basic service charge for qualifying low-income customers. And so That program will be presented here in the next few weeks and presented before the commission and then ultimately decided by the commission. On the low income front, we have various programs out there to help our low income customers, whether that's our equal pay program or our flex pay, which allows folks to pay as they go. Select your due date. We also have actual assistance programs where the folks can apply to receive dollars, so Project Reach and Project Safe, and then also the LIHEAP program, which is the state low income home energy assistance program. So with that, I tried to talk fast. I will stop there and see if you have questions. I covered a lot of material. So.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, so I'll start and give my committee members some time to formulate some thoughts if they have some. I'm looking at page 11 about the wildfire self-insurance policy. Do you currently carry $500 million in self-insurance policy right now or is this an additional, the request that you're talking about, is this an additional $500 million to supplement your current liability coverage?
Ryan Bellows, for the record, thanks for the clarifying question. So we currently have about $400 million in traditional coverage secured. This is to add an incremental $500 million so that we can get closer to the $1 billion mark.
Would you keep the current liability coverage that you have, and this would just be a supplemental?
Ryan Bellows, for the record, yes, that's correct.
Would there be any changes to how this money would potentially be distributed in the case that NV Energy had liability like in one of these wildfires?
Ryan Bellows, for the record. So the self-insurance component, in my opinion, would be easier to administer and provide to customers, given that it would be held in trust for claims like this, unlike a traditional model, which could take some time, I'm guessing.
And where would it be held in trust? Would this be administered through NV Energy or the?
Ryan Bellows, for the record, it would be administered through, the proposal is that it be administered through NV Energy with oversight by the commission.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? No, we'll start down here. How about Senator Hansen?
Actually, just a fun fact. Long ago, I was a scoutmaster, and Ryan was one of my Boy Scouts. True story.
How's he
I
doing?
won't pick on him.
How's he doing?
He's an Eagle Scout, aren't you?
Ryan Bellows, for the record, I am not.
Oh, see, that's just embarrassing now. That's just embarrassing now.
It really embarrassed us in the slide.
Yeah.
Senator Brock, I believe you have a question.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. My question is in regards to economic diversification, and I've been working closely with a solar company that is trying to get power into their warehouse, and I know that your leadership has been made aware of this, but what are you doing so that we can try and get, solar manufacturing and that type of businesses here in Nevada, so that way we're not shipping solar materials across the world and having to pay for that? It just seems like it makes so much sense, but for some reason I feel like there's picking winners and losers, or it's just taking a long time to get them the power that they need. How does that work?
Ryan Bellows, for the record, thank you for the question. So I'll answer that in a couple different ways. I think sometimes in the instance of manufacturers, oftentimes when folks are leasing buildings, they're not exactly clear on what type of power requirements they need. So in a scenario like that, we try to be obviously as responsive as we can and helpful. The best thing for folks looking to move or relocate, we have a full-fledged economic development team that meets with folks, and they're tied to the hip with EDON and LVGA and these other economic development agencies at the state. And so really, we want to be part of the solution. We want to make sure Nevada's open for business and that we're doing everything we can to encourage folks to relocate here and be here. So we're really trying to be integrated with those teams. One of the slides that I went over was GreenLink, and so really adding and building the backbone on the transmission side is going to allow us to more easily and readily move energy across the state. So that's also going to be a game changer for the state. Yep.
Thank you. I think Senator Danyate.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just want to ask a really quick question based on some of the reporting that we received from the Nevada Independent. Over the weekend, there was an article that talked about how the federal funding freeze might place some of our local jurisdictions and partners in limbo. can you speak to how, well, let me break this down into two questions. Number one, is NV Energy going to be affected by the federal funding freeze, or can you provide some insight into that? And then number two, if we are affected by it, what are the ramifications or the programs that you expect to potentially not have because of the funding freeze? Maybe if you're able to speak to that and what our response should be. I know we're in, just as context, we're having the same conversation in HHS and other sectors, and so I just wanted to get your feedback on it.
Ryan Bellows for the record. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'll probably give you a more full briefing at another time, or brief the whole committee. I think the short version is, and we're still digging through a lot of this, we are eligible for several grants that were available under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So millions of dollars in various forms of grants are potentially frozen right now. They certainly won't impact any of those projects going forward. Should those funds be unfrozen, it'll make any of the initiatives that we're undertaking more affordable for customers. So certainly we're tracking that and want that to come to fruition. But we don't see any real impacts other than that to the company at this point.
Senator Pazina.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have no doubt that that you have nothing to do with the fact that you're not an Eagle Scout. It was your trainer over here. On slide 13.
That was too nice.
On slide 13, you had mentioned that the proposal requests that NV Energy would be allowed to waive the basic service charge for qualifying low-income customers. What is the basic service charge?
Ryan Bellows for the record. I believe the service charge is around $18 in that neighborhood.
I have one more follow-up question, just because I just want to clarify. When you're talking about the wildfire liability proposal, I see, it's a relatively minimal, I guess, cost on the consumer. The current liability protection that you have, is that incorporated in, do the ratepayers pay that currently, or is that something that the company already covers?
Ryan Bellows for the record. So our insurance costs are recovered by customers, certainly subject to review by the Public Utilities Commission to make sure that those costs are prudent and reasonable, but the current insurance costs are covered, yes.
And I don't think we have any other questions. Thank you for your brief presentation. I would give you a merit badge for that, so it was good.
Thank you.
We'll get him to Eagle Scout.
Yeah, it might get you over the line. No, but thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, I'm saving, I heard you guys all describe yourself as a working team. So we will bring another part of this team up to the table, the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. We have Stephanie Mullen, the Executive Director, and Garrett Weir, General Counsel. So I will turn it over for you guys to, again, introduce yourself, spell your name for the record, and begin when you're ready. Do you need a 1-minute recess? Do you want to take a 1-minute recess, or do you want to get started?
Maybe take a quick recess.
We're going to just take a 1-minute recess while we get the presentation up online. Okay, we're back on the record, and begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Wen, Vice Chair Pazina, members of the committee. I am Stephanie.
Are those microphones working?
I am Stephanie Mullen.
We're struggling today. It's okay.
I know,
It's Monday.
so sorry. Executive
ahead.
Director of the Public Utilities Commission, and with me today is Garrett Weir, our General Counsel. Today we will provide a brief overview of the agency's operations and structure and provide details on the utility sectors we regulate in Nevada. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to get started. The PUCN serves as a regulatory agency overseeing a broad spectrum of public utility services in the state. Key aspects of the PUCN's work include regulating approximately 400 investor-owned utilities across multiple sectors, including electric, natural gas, telecommunications, water and wastewater services, gas and electric master meter services at mobile home parks, and some propane systems. The PUCN plays a critical role in overseeing gas pipeline safety within the state, in a partnership with the United States Department of Transportation's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA. The PUCN ensures that natural gas pipelines are operated safely and in compliance with federal and state safety standards. The agency also oversees safety protocols for underground excavation activities near subsurface installations in coordination with the 811 program or the Call Before You Dig program. Additionally, the PUCN's Rail Safety Division monitors and inspects 4 key areas within the rail safety domain, covering all lines within the state. The PUCN's organizational structure consists of 2 main components, the Commission and the regulatory operations staff. Together, these entities ensure that the agency fulfills its critical regulatory responsibilities while maintaining independence and transparency. The Commission, which includes a quasi-judicial body made up of 3 members appointed by the governor to serve in staggered 4-year terms, currently is chaired by Haley Williamson, with Commissioners Tammy Cordova and Randy Brown serving as the other 2 members. In addition to the commissioners, there is an entire team of experts and counsel who provide analysis, legal advice, and additional expertise. And this structure helps ensure that decisions are well-informed and legally sound. The regulatory operations staff, or staff, operates independently, conducting audits, investigations, and providing expert analysis in commission proceedings. The commission is prohibited from communicating with the staff in any way that could influence or undermine the contested case. Both entities share administrative support for non-case related matters, allowing for efficient operations without compromising their distinct roles. I'd like to touch on how the agency is funded for just a moment, as it can play an important component in enabling us to carry out our regulatory duties and responsibilities. The PUCN is not funded by the state's general fund, but through an annual regulatory fee, also known as a mill assessment, which is levied on regulated utilities' intrastate revenues. The mill assessment is capped at 3.5 mills and was set in 1980. The structure and funding model help ensure the PUCN's independence, efficiencies, and transparency required to regulate Nevada's utilities, supporting fair and impartial regulation. Now I'll pass it off to Garrett to provide an overview of some other utilities.
Good afternoon. For the record, Garrett Weir, Garrett and I'm going to walk through the types of utilities that the PUCN regulates and the proceedings that the Commission presides over. So I'm, in the interest of being brief, I'm not going to reiterate the details of what the electric utilities and most of the natural gas providers in the state do, given that we just heard presentations from those utilities. However, for natural gas, I will mention that the PUCN also licenses discretionary suppliers of natural gas, known as alternative sellers, and they provide discretionary gas service to large industrial and commercial users in Nevada. And as Ms. Mullen stated, the PUC performs a role in coordination with the Department of Transportation's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to oversee federal pipeline safety programs in Nevada. With regard to water and wastewater, the Commission's primary activities in this sector include ensuring the delivery of clean, safe, and reliable service to customers at reasonable rates. The Commission monitors the quality of service, environmental compliance, and financial performance. The commission fully regulates the rates, service quality, and service territories of 27 investor-owned water and wastewater utilities in the state.
And now we'll go off to rail. Sorry, jeez. Okay. The PUCN employs federally certified personnel in specialized disciplines to conduct inspections and ensure compliance with safety regulations under the Code of Federal Regulations Title 49, which pertains to the Department of Transportation. These specialized inspectors help maintain safety standards for rail operations. The inspection personnel are certified in the following discipline: operations practice inspector, who ensures that procedures and protocols are followed by the railroad; motive power and equipment inspectors, whose focus is on the safety and maintenance of the power motive, which are the engines and locomotives, and other critical equipment used in rail operations; a track inspector, who is responsible for evaluating the condition and safety of rail track; and a hazardous materials inspector, whose primary focus is on the safe handling, storage, and transportation of hazardous material.
And if I could just remind you guys, I know you're switching back and forth, but every time you switch back and forth, if you could state your name again for the record. Thank you.
Stephanie Mullen for the record. I will continue on to telecommunications. The PUCN's key regulatory duties in the telecommunications sector include certifying competitive telecommunications suppliers, licensing wireless providers and ensuring compliance with state laws and regulations, reviewing applications from eligible telecommunication carriers to offer discounted rates to low-income consumers and groups, ensuring telecommunication services are available in rural areas, and reviewing and approving performance plans for telecommunication providers, regulating rates for about 320 small-scale providers, ensuring essential services are accessible in underserved areas. However, there are certain telecommunication services that the PUCN does not including cellular and wireless service, long-distance telephone service, paging, internet service, voice over IP, and other competitive telecommunication products. Now, back to Mr. Weir.
For the record, Garrett Weir. So the PUCN performs a quasi-judicial function in presiding over contested cases. It also performs a quasi-legislative function in adopting regulations. Most of the contested cases at the PUCN are applications submitted by utilities, the most prominent of which are rate cases and requests related to resource planning. Resource planning is a process through which the Commission determines future needs for utility service and approves a prudent course of action for ensuring that utilities will be prepared to satisfy those needs. In a rate case, the Commission determines the cost of providing safe, reliable service to customers and sets appropriate rates for the utility to recover those prudently and reasonably incurred costs. Other types of contested cases are customer complaints and proceedings in which the Commission investigates whether regulated entities should be subject to administrative penalties for misconduct. Rulemakings are where the Commission adopts regulations. They generally follow legislative sessions to implement legislation. The Commission occasionally conducts rulemakings pursuant to its general authority to adopt regulations necessary to carry out its duties as well. The ability to file a petition with the PUCN provides an opportunity for people to request general relief in the form of advisory opinions or declaratory orders regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the Commission. And finally, the Commission regularly conducts investigations to examine matters related to utility service. So, I will try to be brief in describing what is a very complex, complicated type of case. But general rate case, these are the cases where the Commission determines what customers are going to pay for service. And it's basically designed to allow recovery. The general rate case is designed to allow for recovery of all prudently incurred costs that aren't fuel or purchased power costs. So it would include things like O&M and infrastructure investments, that sort of thing. So first, we determine the amount of money that the utility is entitled to recover. This is called the revenue requirement. So then we determine the rates that different types of customers should pay for the utility to actually recover that revenue requirement. The annual revenue requirement consists of all costs prudently incurred over a backward-looking historic test year that aren't fuel and purchase power costs, plus a reasonable return on the utility's investments in certain types of things, mainly physical infrastructure necessary for providing service to customers. So part of developing that revenue requirement is also determining a return on investment that the utilities should be entitled to recover. And in doing that, the commission looks at macroeconomic factors, basically what is the appropriate return necessary on that capital investment to attract that capital based on the risk of that utility relative to other types of investments that people could make. So basically, for similarly risky investments, we should provide a similar return. So this involves a lot of expert testimony that gets into the minutia of economics, but essentially the commission ends up coming up with a return that's appropriate. So that return amount is then applied to the costs that were prudently incurred that are the infrastructure types of costs that are eligible for return. So also when determining the revenue requirement and looking at those costs of investments, the commission engages in a depreciation study, which is essentially just determining, once you know the sticker cost of an asset that's built or purchased, determining what the useful life is of that and over how many years we can amortize the cost. So when you're coming up with that annual revenue requirement, the life of that asset matters. The longer the life, the less rate impact it's going to have in the short term. And then, so basically, those are the components of revenue requirement. All of the costs over, what amount of time with an adequate or appropriate return. And then once you come up with that number of, what the utility is entitled to recover, you have to figure out how to calculate rates that are fair, who's going to pay for it. And this is really where other customers, different customer classes, will, in our proceedings, argue about who is more responsible. And so that process is driven by what's called a cost of service study, where we look at the relative cost of providing service to customers. Some customers are more expensive than others to serve. Some are less expensive. We look at things like the load profile, how consistent is the demand for electricity or other types of service. Is it something that's predictable? Can we, basically there are a lot of things that go into providing service, reading meters, other types of infrastructure investment, distribution system upgrades. So once we determine the relative costs for customers, we end up setting rates, and that portion of a rate case is considered or is labeled the rate design phase. So. All right. I actually am gonna, before jumping into integrated resource planning, I am just gonna briefly address the other component of energy rates, which is the energy rate. So that the cost of fuel and purchased power. So that's for a natural gas utility, that's the cost of the natural gas that it purchases for delivery to customers for their use, and as well as the cost of interstate pipeline service used to obtain the natural gas. For electric utilities, fuel costs include the cost of coal and natural gas to generate electricity at power plants, and it also includes purchased power costs when utility buys electricity in the wholesale market, and that includes renewable energy power purchase agreements. So fuel and purchased power costs are passed on to ratepayers on a dollar-for-dollar basis without providing any profit to the utilities. The return is, again, on the investment in infrastructure to deliver those commodities. So fuel and purchased power rates charged to retail customers consist of two components: the base tariff energy charge, or the BTER, and the deferred energy accounting adjustment rate. So the BTER is set to collect from ratepayers the estimated cost of fuel and purchased power. It's updated each quarter to reflect the average recorded costs of fuel and purchase power for the previous 12 months. The DEAA rate eliminates the difference between the BTER revenues and the utility's actual costs of fuel and purchase power, so that in the end, ratepayers only reimburse the utility for actual costs. So it's a true-up mechanism. If the BTER was set too high, customers receive a credit in the DEAA. If the BTER was set too low, the utility collects the difference. So on an annual basis, electric and gas utilities apply to the PUCN for a determination that their fuel and purchase power costs for the previous calendar year were prudent. In general, electric utilities make a filing called a Deferred Energy Accounting Adjustment Application, so a DEAA application, and gas utilities make a filing called an Annual Rate Adjustment Application, or the ARA. The PUCN examines the fuel and purchase power costs in those proceedings to determine whether the utilities prudently incurred them. The law requires that the PUCN disallow recovery of any fuel and purchase power costs that it determines were imprudent. So an integrated resource plan, or an IRP, that's a long-term 20-year plan to meet demand for gas, water, wastewater, or electric services in an efficient, reliable, and sustainable manner at the lowest reasonable cost to customers. And it includes an immediate 3-year plan. So I'll try to accelerate this presentation a little bit. So basically that process is driven by initially forecasting what the demand for the service is going to be. So there are projections of population growth, new businesses. We heard a little bit about the increasing demand for electricity that's driven by certain sectors of the economy. We use all of that information in these proceedings. We get expert testimony to forecast what that demand is going to be, to project it. So, and then once we know what that demand is going to be, we figure out the appropriate way to meet the demand and provide that reliable service through a combination of energy supply resources, so supply side resources like generation facilities, recognizing that we need to comply with the state's renewable portfolio standard, which prescribes some of the types of resources that we must use. And then also there's a demand side management plan where we look at energy efficiency and conservation, as well as demand response, where you're shifting the time of use to address the demand for energy. So the frequency of these, well, I guess taking one step back, prudence determinations. So once approved in an IRP, a project is deemed prudent, and there's essentially a presumption of recovery of all reasonably incurred costs associated with the project in a future rate case. So it's kind of a pre-approval for cost recovery for the components of one of those plans. And then as far as frequency of filing, the law, after being updated last session, provides that a resource plan filing must be filed at least once every 3 years, but it allows a more frequent filing. The process for resolving an IRP the timeline is 210 calendar days for all components except the energy supply plan, which has a 135-day timeline. And really, as far as the hearing process, the procedures with the IRP, following last legislative session, NV Energy is now required to conduct a consumer session and pre-filing meetings with stakeholders in advance of its filing. And I think that's most of the IRP process. So additional duties that the PUC performs reflect increasingly complex, changing regulation that has changed from merely traditional rate regulation of utilities that we performed in the past. So this includes consumer protection, growing complexities of resource planning, environmental planning, even economic development, oversight of incentive programs for distributed energy resources. That includes rooftop solar, and other types of renewable energy at the distributed level. Electric vehicle infrastructure programs, pipeline safety enforcement, gas infrastructure replacement, natural disaster protection planning. That's one that we heard about earlier from the electric utility. And then also coordination with federal regulatory agencies such as the FCC, the FERC, and PHMSA, as we discussed. And with that, we're available for questions.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I'll get it started here. When you're talking about these IRPs, and we've seen like the costs of projects kind of balloon across all sectors, whether it's NDOT or any of these other agencies where just things have gotten more expensive. And I'm imagining we have some of those similar situations. How does the PUCN like address some of those things as to not affect the ratepayer? And just if you start a project and you thought it was going to cost one amount and it's like doubled or tripled since the original plan was like submitted and approved, how does the PUCN deal with that?
For the record, Garrett Weir, wonderful question, and it's a challenging situation when we see those cost increases occur above original budgeted amounts. I think it's worthwhile to note that the commission has a balance of interests it balances interests when considering these applications. And that's the interests of the customers of the utility, but also the shareholders of the utility. And so, we're not able to just, in the interest of saving costs for customers, pass along costs to the utility if they behaved in a prudent manner. And so what we look at are for projects that went through the integrated resource planning process, we examine, at that point, they've been deemed prudent. So that plan, if it's executed in a prudent way, reasonably, the commission will, it's presumed to be entitled to cost recovery. The question in a rate case, which is where those dollars would be recovered, is going to be, were the utility's actions in carrying out that plan ultimately still prudent? So was there a point at which it became too expensive? Was there, did it remain prudent? And there are a lot of considerations that are in play when determining whether it's prudent. Some of which sometimes is there a legislative obligation for them to carry out that plan, in which case there isn't a lot of discretion on the part of the utility. But a lot of it would be, as circumstances changed, did the utility continue to act in a prudent, reasonable way?
And just kind of following up with that, you said that you're in a unique situation where you're not just a consumer protection like organization, but you also have to balance consumers and their rates along with the shareholders of these utilities. What goes into the determination on, let's say you have a $2 billion project, and how that's distributed over what period of time that's distributed on the ratepayer, so they don't see, a 100, 200, 300% jump in their bill because some project that's probably needed is all put into, 1 year or over a couple year period. Like what goes into that decision-making process to make sure that obviously the people that have completed the projects, the utilities and their shareholders, but also to make sure that the ratepayer that's paying for all of it doesn't get hit with it all at once?
Again, for the record, Garrett Weir, another great question. And these are the types of things that are litigated before the commission regularly. We would see testimony come in from parties with probably different positions where they would argue about, what's reasonable. And in the utility rate-making world, the term that is applied to rates, what makes them lawful is that they're just and reasonable. That's in statute. It's a constitutional standard as well. And so the question would be, is it just and reasonable? And that applies to how equitable it is to both the utility and customers. And so, would it be reasonable to prolong recovery of something where the utility has fronted the costs in a way where, would it be just and reasonable for the utility? But similarly, when you start to have an accumulation of costs, at what point does that rate impact become so severe that it's no longer just and reasonable as far as the magnitude of the rates charged to customers? So, these are things that, we have expert witnesses representing numerous parties. I mean, to give you an example of the participation that we see in our proceedings, and in our most recent integrated resource planning case, there were 27 parties representing, distinct, sophisticated industries and customers, and advocacy groups. So, and they all bring expert witnesses, they have positions that they take, and those are the types of things that are argued about. And I can't give you a simple answer because it's not a simple question. But the commission ultimately, works hard to achieve that balance and come up with legally supportable, evidence-based decisions. And one thing I didn't mention earlier when speaking about our proceedings is, there's a process for parties who feel aggrieved by the decision or that they believe that it was unlawful or not based on sufficient evidence, whereby they can seek reconsideration at the commission and then ultimately seek judicial review, where the commission's decisions can be looked at by a judge on appeal.
And then just a final question along this area. Like you said that there were 27, like at a recent thing where you had 27 different interest groups. Does everyone have the ability to participate in this process? And then as kind of secondarily, who has standing to challenge the PUCN's decisions? You said that there was a process and there was due process to be able to challenge some of those decisions. Who ultimately has that ability?
For the record, Garrett Weir. So, as far as the standards for intervention, those are outlined in regulation, and basically, a party needs to have a direct and substantial interest, and it can't duplicate the participation of another entity. So, what we see generally is, when you're dealing with the kinds of sophisticated, unique customers who participate, usually they are distinct enough to have their own distinct direct and substantial interest. And those are, large, commercial operations usually, or some sort of large commercial or industrial customer, if we're talking about customer groups. And then, all types of advocacy organizations, if they're like articles of incorporation, are related to the issue that's before the commission, they would have a direct and substantial interest. But where you see basically the biggest limit, I guess, where folks may want to participate and ultimately aren't able to, is with residential customers whose interests are represented by the Bureau of Consumer Protection within the Attorney General's office. So they participate on behalf of all residential customers, and an individual residential customer participating would essentially duplicate that and complicate or just in the interest of efficiency, that is a restriction that applies. And then just quickly, as far as standing to challenge decisions, often it is limited to standing as a party, and then for contested cases, and then generally anyone would be able to challenge like a regulation through the statutes that exist to seek judicial review of the lawfulness of a regulation.
Sorry about that. I don't think we have any other questions from the committee. I appreciate your presentation and being willing to answer questions. And the same thing for everyone. So thank you. And we will go to our next agenda item. Public comment. the best part, right? We've arrived at our last agenda item, which is public comment. Again, limit your public comment to 2 minutes. To call in, please dial 1-888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 865-3322-3109 and press pound. I will go here to the room in Carson City for public comment. Please remember to state your name for the record and spell it, and begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christy Cabrera-Georgeson, CHRISTI-CABRERA-GEORGESON. I'm the Deputy Director for the Nevada Conservation League. As Nevada kicks off the 2025 legislative session, new polling confirms what Nevadans have been saying all along. They want clean energy, affordable bills, and transparency on utility spending. Conducted by the Global Strategy Group and North Star Opinion Research, the survey of 1,050 registered voters reveals strong bipartisan backing for policies that rein in NV Energy and Southwest Gas while advancing clean energy solutions. The results send a clear message. Nevadans expect policymakers to take meaningful action. Across party lines, voters strongly support reducing pollution and expanding clean energy options over out-of-state fossil fuels, with 68% saying they prefer local clean energy. This isn't a new sentiment. For years, Nevadans have fought against reckless spending on methane gas projects that lock customers into fossil fuels for decades. Polling also shows deep mistrust of Nevada's energy utilities, rooted in real experiences. Years of poor planning, volatile methane gas price spikes, unfair rate hikes, and reckless spending. 74% don't trust NV Energy to keep electric bills affordable, and 76% believe the company prioritizes profits over reasonable rates. Voters also want policymakers to take decisive action to rein in monopoly utilities, protect customers, and keep utility rates low. 81% want policymakers to step in. And just to note, since it came up earlier today, polling was also done on wildfire liability and found that 55% of Nevadans oppose having customers pay to cover liabilities when the utility is found causing a catastrophic wildfire. Overall, polling results demonstrate that Nevadans are demanding clean energy, affordable bills, and stronger protections for monopoly utilities. These issues enjoy substantial bipartisan support across all demographics and reflect the concerns of families who are seeking economic relief and corporate accountability. Elected officials have a clear opportunity to meet public demands and deliver meaningful action on these issues important to Nevada voters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Olivia Tanager, Director of the Sierra Club, the Toyabe chapter of the Sierra Club, for the record. I wanted to briefly talk about the study and the results of the study that NV Energy mentioned in their presentation earlier. While we did give them an A for retiring off of coal, I did want to be clear that moving off of coal when you're sitting in the middle of a rich solar resource is a great but obvious thing to do. Coal has gotten expensive, solar has gotten a lot cheaper over time. So while we're happy with the progress that NV Energy has made in retiring coal and building out clean energy, they do have a long way to go to meet all of our recommendations as outlined in that report. I did want to point out, as Ms. Cabrera-Georgeson pointed out, that NV Energy's residential rates have skyrocketed over the last few years. I'm sure you've heard that from your constituents. I know I've heard it from my members time and time again, faster than most other utilities. So according to the Energy Information Administration, NV Energy's residential rate increase was the 8th greatest among 151 investor-owned utilities across the country. Between 2021 and 2023, residential rates shot up by nearly 50%. So a pretty substantial increase over the last few years. And as you heard today, there are a few more proposals for more rate increases. And folks are really feeling it. People are feeling like they have to make choices between buying groceries and keeping their lights on. And that's a choice that no one should have to make. So my organization also intervened in the 2024 IRP, and I also want to be clear that the grade that we gave NV Energy was before they proposed 2 new gas peaking power plants, the methane gas peaking power plants that you heard about earlier. We are very concerned about that because methane gas is so price volatile. Solar and a lot of renewables have become more price stable and are therefore, in our perspective, a better investment for ratepayers and protect ratepayers from costs rising and falling. So we would have liked to see more renewable relied upon in the IRP, and we're disappointed in the gas peaking power plants. So just wanted to point that out because that's both a health concern and a economic concern for ratepayers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any? Oh, we do. Feel free to fill in these seats if you're here in Carson City to testify. And if you are in Las Vegas, if you want to get into those seats as well, we'll go there next. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
HUBBARD, and I'm with Solar United Neighbors. I'm the Nevada Program Director. Solar United Neighbors is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works in Nevada to educate people about solar energy, technology, economics, and policies. We help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. Nevada residents face some of the highest electricity costs in the nation, with more than 21% unable to afford their bills. Solar can help ease this burden. It is the most affordable power source available to us. Its benefits are profound. And Nevada leads the nation in solar jobs per capita, creating skilled local employment opportunities. The average Nevada solar household saves around $1,500 in the first year on electricity bills, with a typical system paying it for itself in less than 10 years. Beyond economic benefits, more solar means reduced pollution and water consumption in our drought-prone region. We feel strongly that utilities like Nevada Energy should be working to enable solar access for the benefit of all Nevadans, not standing in the way for the benefit of shareholders. Sun is here throughout the legislative session and beyond to represent solar consumers, defend solar policies from attacks, and advocate for a cleaner, healthier, and more affordable future for all Nevadans, with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other people here in Carson City. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. I do see our committee council there. Seeing no one there, if we can go to the phone lines.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Our next meeting is on Wednesday. And at this time, this concludes our meeting for today, and meeting is adjourned.